God, I'm tired today. I need to bring the energy.
No, I'm kind of the same. I don't know what's it's all this week. I've had a good night's sleep, like 7, 8 hours even sometimes, and I just feel knackered all the
Yeah,
time.
what is
I'm
that?
wondering if it's this heavy heat thing where it's just like it's just keeping me tired.
Yeah, I think I get very affected by the heat. Thank you for joining me. Happy Pride.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so
Happy
excited.
Pride to you too.
Thank you so much. Happy Pride to everybody listening, and welcome to Armchair Artist. I'm Oliver Kirkham. Today's guest is a GLAAD award-winning writer, most known for his comicsology comic series, The Pride, which features a host of LGBT plus superheroes. He's also worked as a comic editor and critic, working for a range of media outlets including Gay Times. Delighted to have on the pod Joe Glass.
Thank you very much, Oliver. So nice to be here.
Could you tell that I was reading that introduction off of a script?
Only mildly. I just thought it was your natural talent coming out.
Yeah. Really natural delivery. How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. Creatively a little pent up at the moment. Lots of ideas, nothing really coming out easily, but it is what it is. And like I say, just work through things slowly and I'll come out the other side.
Nice.
But otherwise, very good.
Good.
Health is back to normal and I've been pretty good for a while. Excited for Pride coming up in Cardiff in a week's time. So
Lovely.
yeah, very, very excited generally.
Yeah.
But yeah, all good generally.
Nice. Creative constipation. Let's work that out.
Yeah, it's one of those things I have always suffered from terribly as a creator. And I don't know, sometimes I put it down to I'm fairly certain that I have ADHD. It's never been officially diagnosed because getting that kind of diagnosis in the UK on the NHS is so difficult.
Yes.
And I frankly just do not have the money to go private. So it's one of those things where it's something I've only really recently discovered, like the last 5-6 years. A lot of fellow creators in the comic space in particular either already had that diagnosis, but they were primarily from America, and a lot of UK ones are finding out later in life, which is happening not just in comics. Actually, it's actually a rising trend generally.
Yeah.
Because obviously I think in the UK we had such a backwards attitude to that. Like when I was growing up, because yes, unfortunately I'm old. I'm from the 1980s. Back then, I think here in the UK we considered it's an American problem. British kids don't have this.
That's interesting.
Or we'd have that idea that it was one specific kind of thing, and it's always like the problem kids, the noisy lot, you know.
Yeah.
And I was never that. I was actually very studious. I was very good in school, and I kind of generally did very well. But when I look back at it, I just sort of start realizing, well, that's because I had structure, which when you start getting out of school and you don't have structure and maybe have a neurodivergence, that can make things more difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's something I've discovered, and I feel like it's gotten worse with age. Or maybe it was COVID, who knows. But yeah, it's kind of become a thing where it's very difficult for me now sometimes to actually get out of my own way, out of my own head with creativity. But I would say I've always kind of had a little bit of a problem with it because I come up with a lot of ideas, but focusing on one and sitting down and bashing it out is so much harder.
That was going to be my next question, was is it the sitting down and the focusing for
absolutely
concentrated amount of time?
Yeah, if you saw my notes apps on my phone over various notebooks I've got dotted around everywhere on my work desk, it's literally heaping piles, and they're filled with little snippets of sentences or dialogue or ideas, but then actually trying to be right, get them all together, sit down, get writing. I find it so difficult.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it was always the hardest step for me to get out of my own head, to get the idea out, and to also get that out into the world. So it actually took external influence to actually get me to make my first comic series, or at least my first solo one. Or where I was a writer, I had artists because I can't draw for toffee. So it was one of those things where I kind of needed that external help sometimes. Once I got into the flow though, like it was a lot easier, but unfortunately like 5-6 years ago the flow got interrupted, and it kind of became more of a problem.
Yeah.
That being said, it hasn't stopped me making. I just make probably a lot slower rate than I used to.
Yeah.
But I find that when I'm giving it that sort of time, sometimes I think the stories I write are maybe a bit better. Like the first novel I wrote, which was just after COVID and everything, and when comics kind of had a bit of a blip for me, I kind of started writing a novel, and I feel like it's one of the best things I've written, because I took the time to really focus on it.
Yes.
So yeah, it's just finding your focus and getting to work through it sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is just getting out of your way. Like I think one of the other elements is like, particularly with comics, it's such a stressful medium because I think we were talking about it a little earlier, there's a lot of marketing involved in it, and that doesn't come easily to me.
No.
In fact, quite the opposite. And particularly with like the changes in social media and algorithms now, it's just so difficult for me to get my head around that I just kind of start struggling to be like, well, what's the point in working at it, because it's not going to work or something like that. So like it gets me in my head too much. So sometimes I find what really can help is just taking a break. Just be like, stop trying to think like, oh, what's the point, it's going to be too difficult, or this is so hard, or how will I market this. Don't worry about it, just create. Just write your thing, draw your thing, whatever, and you can worry about the other stuff later, once you have a completed product, which is so annoying to me to sort of get myself into that headspace now, when I used to advise that for artists all the time. Like, I've worked with artists who would take a very long time to draw a book or something, and it was because they were like, oh, I just need the page to be perfect. And I was like, don't worry about perfect, done is more important.
Yeah.
So you can always be like, I'm not so happy with that page. Great, the next time gives you motivation to work on it differently, or come at it at a different angle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's good, that's growth. But getting myself to take my own advice is apparently very difficult.
Well, yes, that's kind of infamous. It sounds like you're quite self-aware, though, in terms of your, specifically to your practice. It sounds like, I mean, you've been working for how long?
Oh, God. Really showing my age in this podcast. About 17 years.
I'm here to dox you. I'm here to expose all of your secrets to the world.
Yeah, it's probably about 7. No, I actually checked this out the other day. Working at it, probably 17 years.
Yeah.
First thing published from me was 15 years ago. It's 15 years ago next year, I think. So obviously had a few years of just sort of writing and not really releasing anything. And then, we finally took the plunge, and first books probably came out about 15 years ago as of 2027, if I remember. Or it might be, no, it's the end of this year. Sorry, it's like October 2026.
Wow.
I think was the first issue of The Pride. So yeah, it's been about 15 years of actual publishing.
Yeah.
But closer to 17 years of actual writing.
Yeah. So you won a GLAAD award, which is really cool.
Thank you.
Was that for the Pride?
No, that was actually for a book called Young Men in Love, which is an anthology, or a comic book anthology of short stories of male romance, created exclusively by male or male identifying creators who've experienced that same feeling, which sort of stemmed a little bit from how whenever there's a growing popularity in romance, particularly in novels, more necessarily than comic books, but primarily written by cisgender women who are straight. So it's just like, yes, that's great, and you can absolutely do these books, and like that's amazing, because so often they are absolutely incredible books. Just look at things like Heartstopper and all that. But there is an element of it's not necessarily authentic, and it's felt a little weird to me and my co-editor, because I not just wrote it, I was editing the book and putting it together with Matt Miner and A Wave Blue World. it was awesome to have those things out there, but that lack of authenticity, and particularly when we were seeing that other creators who are gay men or bi men, who were creating the same kind of books, and sometimes really good books, weren't getting the same kind of love and attention.
Interesting.
So that was kind of the modus operandi for us to be like, let's do this. Let's just focus on getting queer male or male identifying creators to tell their own stories. So yeah, Young Men in Love was the first volume, is what won the GLAAD Award, which was an incredible experience. Obviously, it being a American award meant that I didn't know until I think I woke up the morning the morning after rather, they did the nomination announcements,
right,
to a message from like an American creator I know who's just like, congratulations, and I'm just like, for what? Like, what are you talking about?
That's crazy. You had no heads up from the actual awards.
No prior knowledge to the nomination. And like then for finding out the winning, obviously I wasn't able to get out there because again it's an American award, and if I remember correctly, that one was held in New York.
Yeah.
And I just frankly couldn't afford to go out. So I didn't go. But I couldn't stay up because I think I had work the next day. So I was a bit like, oh, right, I can't really stay up because it's going to be essentially like middle of the night for me. So I'll go to bed and I'll just check it first thing in the morning. Checked it first thing in the morning. Didn't need to, because again, woke up to hundreds of messages from people all over congratulating, and we'd won, which was awesome. And thankfully, very kindly, GLAAD were actually up for sending me out one of the awards, which I actually got the physical award maybe about 3 or 4 months after the announcement. But yeah, I got it, and it's up on my bookshelves as a reminder that I did do that thing.
Incredible.
It was awesome. It was one of those little goals I had in my head, to be like how I'd like to see the future going for me as a creator.
Yeah.
And the GLAAD Award was something I was like, I'd love to win one, or at least be nominated, to say that like, I'm getting attention and appreciation from the community that I particularly like to serve in my creative endeavors.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really awesome to have that moment and have it actually happen.
Yeah.
But then you kind of feel like, all right, I've got to come up with new dreams and new goals now. So yeah.
It's quite nice. I mean, it sounds like there was an appetite for male-on-male romance in kind of the graphic novel space.
Definitely.
I mean, that helps.
Obviously, you had things like Heartstopper, which obviously became wildly popular, particularly after the Netflix show. Was Heartstopper, like, in terms of time frame, was that before or after? It's the Heartstopper TV show came out the same year that we released, if I remember correctly, the first season. But obviously, the webcomic had been going on for a while.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, if I remember correctly, the year that Heartstopper started on Netflix was the same year that we actually released Young Men in Love. Obviously, by the time the Heartstopper show was on, Young Men in Love would have released about 3 or 4 months after the show had dropped. But obviously, we'd been working on it for about a year prior, corralling various comic creators, which is like herding cats. So yeah, we got it all together in that space. But yeah, Heartstopper was kind of a known commodity to readers of Webtoon for a while. And I think they started releasing the volumes in bookstores and stuff by that point as well. So it was kind of like a known commodity. And there was an awareness that there is interest, particularly in the graphic novel medium. Yeah. Which is like, again, why we thought like, well, it would be nice if it was actually queer male creators and non-binary or trans male creators who are actually writing these stories. And we had some really powerful ones submitted, because it wasn't just all like slice of life stuff. We had some like fun, it's like there's been a ghost story, there's been pirate stories, there's been a bit of everything in there, but all around that idea of a male-male romance. And we also wanted explicitly for them to be positive. So there's no like, longing which ends in misery or anything like that. It's they all generally have a happy ending, and they're all generally positive, because obviously it was coming out at a time where it's very difficult for the LGBTQ community as a whole, everywhere in the world, right? Not just in America. So to have it be out there and in an all ages friendly kind of way. So like the books generally, I would say, are teen and up. So it's and like early teen, not like 16 later. So it's accessible and not graphic in that sense. That it's acceptable for everyone. But yeah, it was very important that we have it out there, and I think there was definitely a market for it, and like I say, it got a lot of attention because Young Men in Love won not only the GLAAD, it also won a Ringo Award, which is a comics focus award, primarily nominated by people in the comics industry.
Wow.
So that was really, really nice.
That must have been super flattering.
Yeah, because it was like having the actual attention and acceptance of our fellow creators.
Yeah.
And the nominations are open for fans as well, so it was also kind of a combination of the two. Like, it felt like we're actually being noticed by the creative industry of comics, but also the fans. And that was really awesome to have. And it was nominated for something else as well, but I can't quite remember what it is now because we're talking a few years ago and I'm an old man, as we've discovered. So yeah,
I was going to list them all, but they were quite numerous, and I thought I'll keep the introduction as short as I can.
Yeah,
not sort of too long. But
the Pride did win awards as well, but a slightly smaller one, in the sense of like it's a fairly new award, if I remember correctly. I think the Pride won the inaugural one,
right?
Or at least the inaugural one in a category which involved comics. So it's won a Gaming Mag award back in, I want to say 2022, so it's a while back now.
Years ago.
Yeah, years, absolute ages. Probably even earlier than that, actually. I'm probably completely forgetting it. But yeah, it's the things I've done have thankfully got attention from the people I wanted them to, for people I was writing for. So
good. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I am really interested. So talk about the Pride. It's about LGBT plus superheroes, which I think is an incredible idea, especially in the kind of the post Avengers Marvel universe blowing up and kind of, you know, more films than you can count on two hands about Marvel and DC comics. And I feel, I mean, I don't really watch those types of films, but it seems like there's not ever a lot of LGBT plus representation in those stories, particularly in the film adaptations.
Absolutely. The films are lagging behind.
Yeah.
In terms of representation. Comics, and with Marvel and DC comics, if we're talking about them specifically, they have improved a great deal from what they were. When I started doing the Pride, it's not that they weren't LGBTQ characters in those comics, but they were sorely underrepresented, and they quite often would have either like very much the same stories, or they barely had anything to really do other than just being there and be like, and they would be written in such a way that you wouldn't know they were queer until they say it.
Sure.
And like sometimes in the most dramatically over the top thing, because it would be one of the main stories they would have is a coming out story, and then you just never see them again. So it was like one of those things that, as a massive comic book fan for years, and I particularly love superhero stories, but I was also queer. Like, I loved the X-Men growing up because like it's such a good queer allegory, but it's not very often upfront about it.
What do you think that allegory is?
Well, it's a community of people who are generally treated with suspicion and hatred or anger, or even disgust, just for being who they are, something they have no control over, and just wanting to live their lives peacefully but not being allowed to. And like, it's one of those things where it's such an interesting one, because when I was growing up and reading X-Men, obviously they're based in a school, and they have that little bit of, they have their own little school where they well, in theory they're safe, but that school blows up like once a month.
It really does.
Yeah, so it was like one of those things, like that was so exciting to me, because I felt like, oh, you know, particularly coming out as a teenager in those years, just being like, that would be so awesome to be somewhere where I could just be authentically myself and be safe and all this. But at the same time, as I grow up, that's the idea of it, of limiting yourself to that school, to essentially segregating yourself for safety, where is not right
Yeah.
to me. So when they had their big reinvention of a concept 6 years ago, which is in fan base known as the Krakoan era, where mutants build their own nation.
Oh, wow.
That idea of like, oh, it's essentially like you could have a queer nation, and that's interesting. They take more of a stance on the world and have more of an effect on culture and everything in the world. I'm just like, that's really awesome for really advancing the queer allegory as well. However, as is the state with comics, they have regressed. So it's back to the little groups segregating themselves in little areas again. So it is what it is. That's something which happens in mainstream comics.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to the idea of like how they are with LGBTQ characters, they have improved in leaps and bounds since I started the Pride, and that's awesome to see. It's also, from a marketing businessman head point of view, not the ideal for me personally, in the sense of interest in the Pride specifically waned significantly once Marvel and DC started doing their regular Pride issues, and once they started doing like having more queer characters in more books.
Yeah.
They do a good job, but I would say that independent creators doing queer comics are doing a better job, because they are not scared to have aspects of the community which other mediums or big corporations are not necessarily comfortable with talking about or sharing. So it means like from an independent creator standpoint, you can tell stories of the queer identity which Marvel DC probably just won't touch. Or even parts of the community that they just won't touch. They are improving, but it is slow going.
Yeah.
The films, however, the way you kind of got to look at it is that like comics have been being made in like the Marvel comics since the 60s or something, and they finally start improving how they handle queer characters in the comics in the 2010s. You know, so it's like 50 years to get to that stage. The comic book movie surge that we've seen has been very slowly starting in the early millennium, really blowing up in the 2010s.
Yeah.
So like they're starting as the comics are improving with LGBTQ representation. Now, obviously with TV and films, things move faster. So they are making efforts. They're not doing great. But you can't say there aren't queer characters in some of the films. It's just sometimes you can't tell, because they don't openly say it, or because there's a visible backlash, so they won't, and because they're trying to court certain markets, so they won't focus on it, or it'll be so small, but it's in a scene that can be cut out. So it's a difficult one, because like I say, it's a big business, and the amount of money which is poured into those films, then yes, you can understand why a corporation would be scared to alienate certain audiences. But they could absolutely do better than they are, and I really hope that they will. I just don't have a lot of faith right now that they will. But the comic books at the very least are doing a fairly good job. They're again, could be better, and it would be nice if independent creators who have worked on building that representation in the first place, and showing that there is an audience out there craving those kind of characters, would be allowed to take part more. But yeah, it's definitely an improvement. And DC are perhaps doing a better job, I'd say, of the big two when it comes to superhero comics in the comics world, in that they are including queer characters pretty much all the time. They'll have a big Pride issue. I mean, this year rather, I think they're not just doing a single issue, they're doing like a mini series. So it's actually going to be like 4 or 5 issues, which is actually being co-written by 2 trans women creators who are really under fire in the world at the moment.
Yes.
So it's really awesome to see them doing stuff like that. Whereas Marvel will do their Pride issue, and it's a single issue again this year. And yes, they have queer characters who might show up more often, but the last couple of years it feels like they don't show up quite as much, or they don't have quite as big thing to do. So it's weird. It's like they're both doing a good job. I just feel like DC's doing it slightly better.
Yeah.
And they seem a little bit more willing to take certain risks.
Yeah.
Which Marvel hasn't necessarily. But obviously Marvel's now owned by Disney, so that kind of makes sense. So, because, seeing as Disney cancels or completely changes films which are about queer characters. So
it's interesting thinking back to analogies about kind of separation between communities and like lack of integration. Feels very sign of the times now, almost, with kind of like Trump in America.
Yeah.
All of the right wing kind of stuff from like 2016 onwards, and and kind of trans identity being like politically weaponized.
Absolutely.
So it feels very important for not just the likes of DC and Marvel to include queer characters, but actually for independent authors, writers to actually portray queer storylines with characters that, I don't know, are more like three-dimensional or more kind of
and like
fleshed out.
That's kind of always been something I tried to do with the Pride. Was I played with archetypes, not just in the sense of the superhero identities. Like, people will look at, say, Fabman, who's one of the leads. I say one of the leads. It's a team book, but like, he's one of the big visible characters in it, and he's visibly super queer. Like, he literally wears a rainbow cape and everything, and because it wasn't, but he's also like visibly quite obviously inspired by Superman.
Yeah.
And the idea was to play with archetypes of superheroes so that it's a good way in because it's a new book, it's a whole new world kind of thing, for audiences to take a risk on an independent creator's independent book, to be like, I kind of know what those guys' deal is, you know? But also to play with the archetypes of the queer community. So like, you'll have you have the flamboyantly gay man in Fat-Man, but also you'd have more toned down characters who are like maybe less expressive of their sexuality, in characters like Wolf. And like, that was the other thing, was like playing with the archetypes of like bears and twinks and stuff like that, and using them as superhero code names, because I was just like, they sound like superhero code names, so let's just do that. And the idea of playing with those archetypes was to give a new audience and everything an idea that I kind of know what I'm walking into, but then to play with them, to actually twist them at things and things like that. So like, having Fat Man, who's this flamboyantly super loud, super camp gay man, actually having quite meaningful discussions on like, why can't I just be like this? This is who I am.
Yeah.
And it's not an act. I'm not playing things up. This is just who I am. I'm expressive. I'm loud. And sort of exploring that as a way to also explore how campness has become something which is generally frowned upon in the gay community.
Heavily policed.
Oh god, yeah. And like, this is the thing, when the book was coming out, like, obviously I had certain groups coming out against the book, and they would always pick on Fat Man as like, oh, this is disgusting and all this. But there would also be a large contingent of gay men comics fans who were like, take Fat Man and be like, this is disgusting, we're not all like this. I'm just like, well, no, I know that there's 9 characters and like 3 of them are gay men and they're all completely different. So like, I know we're not all like that. That's why there's more than one, you know.
I do stand by nobody hates gay men more than other gay men.
Definitely.
The internalized homophobia is so real.
It's definitely very much a struggle which I wanted to explore in the series, but also like became very evident from a metatextual standpoint of like trying to put the series out. Because then when you come across someone who maybe has this sort of like standoffish attitude but is open and willing to check it out, they would always come out saying that, oh, I actually really enjoyed it and Fabman's one of my favourite characters. I was just like, well, yeah, you know, like, there's a bit of it to just have fun.
Yeah.
And it's so baffling when you think of like, beginning from the idea of these gay comic fans who didn't like the idea of Fabman, but they like Superman or Batman or Robin, and you're just like, they are so camp. Every single one of them. Like, like Superman in particular, he's literally in a bright blue and red outfit, flying around talking like Boy Scouty positive, like social issues, and they've been like, I don't want to go with his camp character. Oh, he's wearing pink. I'm just like, calm down. It's just
it's like a weird double standard in a way.
Really is.
I mean, like that He-Man movie is out at the moment, and He-Man is so gay.
He-Man is 100% gay. Like, I always used to tell the joke, because I was a massive fan of the original cartoon, as I say, child of the 80s, and I was like, Skeletor fully made me gay. Like, that is one camp-ass queen constantly chasing after this barely clothed blonde hunk of a man.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you're telling me that that's not gay. And it's just like, there are people now, I think when the first trailer for that film dropped, there's a little brief joke where the He-Man's character, Nick Galson's character, has a name plaque in his office, and it says he, him underneath it, and the certain side of the internet were absolutely apoplectic, and you just think, like, you are aware the show was called He-Man, right? It's just like, it's a blink and you're missing joke. The pronoun is in his name. Like what the... I mean, like, oh, bloody pronouns, they gotta stick pronouns in everything. I'm just like, pronouns are in everything. That's language. That's how it is. You know?
Yeah. It's crazy. One thing I was wondering about that I made a note of was, I know nothing about the process of creating, producing, start to finish a comic book. And you mentioned earlier that you don't do the drawings yourself.
Yes.
You just do the writing.
Yeah, while I am a fairly competent at drawing, as in simple drawings, and I would say, like, because I used to do it for fun and to relax when I was younger. I'm not good at sequential storytelling, and like my art, as much as I'm good and competent, like I draw something, you'll know what it is, kind of thing. It's not good enough that it's not what I wanted to present to the world in my story, but also like I wouldn't be happy with it, kind of thing. And there are much better artists, particularly in the comics field, out there. So yes, I hired different artists to draw my book. Obviously, being an independent creator and having artists who wouldn't necessarily be able to like be focused on the project, but would like be happy to draw an issue for me, etc. But I've actually worked with quite a few.
That's nice.
Which is really cool. I love working with different artists. So, it was one criticism sometimes we get for the Pride, because it's now collected as the Pride Omnibus, so it's like got the 3 series that made up the Pride all in one book. But there's a lot of different artists in there, a lot of different art styles, and sometimes people would comment about it. She's like, oh, it's not got the same art style throughout, and it's just like, well, I actually quite like that. You get to have a favourite artist in this one book and stuff like. Yeah. And I can understand wanting like a whole series being drawn in the same style throughout, etc. But it's for me, like as a creator, it was really awesome to work with different artists with different styles, different approaches. But yeah, it was just generally like I'd write the script, and then you kind of like reach out to a comic book artist. Obviously, my advice to anyone looking to do it now is obviously reach out for someone at your level. So if you're like a new creator, reach out to new comic book artists.
Yes.
Not someone. Don't try and send an email to like Greg Capullo and expect him to be like, oh yeah, I'll draw your book. It's like, that's not going to happen, mate.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out. Go to Comic Cons. Meet. There are loads of artists there. They'll be walking around with their portfolio of art to show them for portfolio review by the big companies. So like, yeah, just mix up with people and you make connections. But yeah, I'd reach out to people, hire them for that, and sometimes you'd have an artist who not just will draw the art, but was also a colorist, so they would color their own art. Sometimes you have to hire a colorist in to do it. And then you get a letterer who will take your script and he'll transfer your words to the pictures. Right. And then obviously it's just finding a printer then, or if you're really lucky, a publisher. So yeah, it's very much a communal effort, most comic books, which was another element of why comic books appealed to me a great deal, was because being creative and being a creator can be a very lonely process, because like you're all by yourself coming up with a thing, and for each section it still kind of is, because obviously we weren't like in a studio all working together on this. Like I'd be writing my bit, then I'd email it off and someone's going to do the next bit and kind of thing like that. It's almost like a factory line, but there's also the aspect of community with it, in that you are all working together to create this same thing, you know. And even though you don't necessarily all do it at the same time and in the same place, it still feels nicer to have that company and working towards a goal. Obviously then, since now I've been focusing mainly on novels, it's much more focused on just yourself kind of thing. Much more of a lonely process. So it's an interesting one. It's fun, but it can be difficult as well because you're not all doing it at the same time. But
and I suppose if you're kind of heading up the project as, you know, this is the thing that I want to produce and get out there, and these people are just coming on board to help me, and I'm paying them.
Because that was the other element. Like with the Pride, it was very much my baby in the sense of like I wrote it, I had this idea, and I built the idea, and I'd hire artists to come in, and I always would say to them like, this is absolutely a piece of this is yours, absolutely, because this wouldn't exist if you didn't draw it. But it would always be then essentially me taking charge of everything else on this. So like the art would come in, then I have to look into the printing, or I'd have to get the next step along the line. I tended to handle all the marketing, etc. So it is a lot of workload, not just the writing when you are a writer and you're working like that. There are obviously comic projects out there and creators who will work together much more collaboratively perhaps than I did with Pride, where like you would be coming up with the idea together and building from there. And I think those tend to be projects where you might have an artist doing the whole thing rather than having to hire different artists for each section or something. And like that's really cool, but that can be sometimes a little harder to find, particularly if you as the creator coming in are primarily just a writer kind of thing.
That's interesting. I suppose if you're self-publishing as well, that adds another layer of complexity, because you don't have the, I don't know, like the editing team and like all of the in-house stuff that a publishing house would have.
Like self-editing, particularly with the Pride starting out, was very difficult, and I won't lie, mistakes were made. Like, you know, because it'll be simple things like, a spelling mistake goes by, or I've forgotten. I said this isn't a simple thing. This is actually quite bad. But like, we forgot to credit that guy in the credits. And then you'd be like, right, next time we print some, we'll make sure the name's in there, etc. And it's just literally simple. You're overlooking things because you're only human, and if you are doing it by yourself, you are going to miss things. It don't matter how many times, because at the end of the day you do have to get the thing out there. Particularly if with something like comics, is obviously it's an entertainment thing, so often to get the budget to continue making it, you need to sell the thing. So if you don't have it out there, you can't sell it. So you can absolutely go through multitudes of editing passes, but like if you don't actually get it out there, you're not going to do the next issue. So it is one of those things which does happen. When you're with a publisher, you do have a more of a team from the management point of view of like editors and things like that, who can take a look over things to give you that second opinion. Obviously if you're independent, you can hire people to do that as well, but you can get proofreaders, you can get like hire an editor, and like that might help the process and can sometimes even help in the streamlining of it. But obviously then you've got budget problem, so it kind of depends on what your budget is going in. Like I would say to anyone, because obviously I come from a very working class background, I don't come from any kind of money, I have no savings to speak of, and I certainly didn't at the start of this whole thing. So it was one of those things where I'm doing this off whatever I can squirrel away from my monthly paycheck. And that means that yes, I had to streamline the creative team. So it meant that yes, I was the writer, but it meant that yes, I had to self-edit, and unfortunately when you are self-editing, you are going to miss more. And you know, you just kind of have to do both things to get it out there. So I would say to anyone, like, if you are in the same sort of situation where you like, I don't have the money, so I can't do this, you absolutely can. You just be more forgiving of yourself, because you will make mistakes. But obviously take as much time as you can.
I think when I've written essays and text for shows and like exhibitions and stuff, it's always, I need to give myself like double the time to edit and proofread than I think, because it is like spelling mistakes and sentences that don't make sense and like, you know.
And it's exactly, it's just one of those things, and you kind of learn with time. So I always say to people who are considering down this path, it's like, don't expect yourself to make absolute perfection right
Yeah.
off the bat. Like, again, going back to the idea of like perfection is the enemy of complete. So like, just finish the thing. If you're not happy 100% with it, you can at least be somewhat happy with it that you did it. And you just know that next time you can do better. You know what to look out for.
Yeah.
And just always accept that you're only human. At the end of the day, you will make certain mistakes.
I think it was the sculptor Rodin who said, "No artwork is truly finished, merely abandoned."
Yeah,
Which
I
I quite
agree
like.
with that.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, abandoned is such a harsh word because I'm just like, you can still love the thing when it's out there. But like, it's because like an abandon makes it sound like, no, that's it. You want nothing to do with it now.
Yeah.
But no, it becomes a certain point when you are creating where you have to step back and you have to just let it be. Because like say, yeah, you could keep on chiseling away at something, but like if you keep on doing that, the wood's gonna be nothing but a toothpick. Like, you need to, there's a point where you need to stop and just be like, this is it, this is all I can do with this right now. And you can always come back to the next thing, you know?
100%. Are you working on anything at the moment? Because we were talking about like creative constipation.
Yeah, I'm kind of actually working on a couple of things at the same time. So as much as I say about creative constipation, I've also got a horrible habit of working on multiple things at once, which if anything exacerbates the problem, but there you go. So at the moment I'm actually going through the final editing passes on what will be my next short novel.
Nice.
Which is a different genre to me. It's much more darker and not grimmer, but sort of darker, more of a thriller kind of thing, but also having some sort of fantasy elements to it. And I'm also have started writing my first fantasy book, which I'm actually releasing chapter by chapter on a website called Royal Road, where people post a lot of fantasies, particularly in the lit RPG and progression fantasy space. And because I've become a big fan of those novels lately, it's just like, I'm going to give it a try myself. So I'm slowly pottering away at that, but I think the overall story for that is maybe about 2/3 of the way through. So I think I'm very much approaching the final act of that one. But that's one where I do find a lot of that creative constipation coming, where I'm just like, what's the next thing I need to write there? How do I make the next chapter, etc. And then come up with the ideas. The other thing, the novel is written. Like I say, it's out there. I'm going to self-publish it. It's just going through a final polishing phase.
Nice.
And then I need to hire a cover artist because, again, I can't do that kind of thing. But yeah, other than that, that's kind of the big things. I've got like a bunch of little things which are like on back burners, which I'm just kind of like, they're there. I'm going to get to them, but like I'm going to try and finish these two things first. Because otherwise I'll just make things even worse for myself and create more stress than I need. So those are the two big things at the moment, though.
That's really exciting. I think it's good to have like multiple things on the go, though.
Oh yeah. It is and it isn't. I find because it's not like a lack of focus per se. Because particularly when I'm doing these two things at two different stages. One's just editing, like that is a simple, just going through things, making sure there's no obvious mistakes kind of thing. I'm happy enough with the story for it to be out there kind of thing. I just want to make sure that it doesn't have some glaring error. The other thing is obviously I'm still in the process of actually creating. So that is handy to have if you're going to do multiple things. I think is having that slight separation, what stage they're at. But sometimes I do think that if you do work on too many things at once, it can detract from the overall because you are spreading yourself too thin.
Interesting.
Just because, or at least for me, that's how it works. I think because my brain starts going in so many different tangents. But it becomes hard to lock something down, and like I will start stressing more about like, but I'm not working on this project when I should be working on this one. So I kind of try to limit myself into how many things I do at once. Can't say it always works, because as much as I say there's only those two things which I'm currently working on, I do also have another novel which is about 80% done, but which this other idea came in, so I had to jump on that. So it's weird. That one I've not touched in a while, but like there is like an 80% done novel sitting there as well. So I do have more than the two things, but I do try to focus down a little.
Yeah.
Just because I think if I spread myself too thin, things could go wrong, or at least I feel too stressed.
Yeah. I wouldn't say bits of that I'm similar with, but I tend to like hyper focus on one thing until it is done.
That's my problem. I don't complete. I hyper focus and I get a good chunk of a way, but then
you don't
I get
finish.
distracted. Yeah, I don't finish, and like then I'm like, all right, I've got to finish this.
Yeah.
So if I start trying to do other things, I won't get that finished. You know, because I'll get so hyper focused on that's the other thing is when as a creator, I'm a little all over the place in the sense of I don't stick to one genre. I think a lot of people who do very well, particularly in comics and stuff like that, tend to do the one kind of story or one kind of genre, rather. And I don't like doing that. I find being pinned down like that makes me bored.
Yeah.
And if I'm bored, then I'm not going to create the best I can do.
Absolutely.
So I tend to bounce around a lot. So obviously I've done superheroes, then I've done romance, then I've done erotica, then I've done this thriller thing now I'm doing fantasy. And that's something which I think a lot of agents and marketers and that tell you is a terrible idea, because the audience needs to know who you are. So they need to know, like, they will know you for the one thing.
Yeah.
But like I said, that idea doesn't interest me. Like, I like to be able to bounce around. So, but then that is also what makes it difficult for me if I'm well into creating one thing, and then I come up with this other idea, but it's a completely different genre. But then I get excited about doing that genre. So then I focus on that and don't finish the first thing because my brain's moved on. I'm interested in this sort of feeling now.
Yeah.
So that's why I try to limit the scope. Because if at least with the two things I'm working on at the moment, which again are at two different stages, there is a connective tissue to them. They both are technically fantasies. They're very different fantasies, but they're both technically fantasies. They are both dealing with slightly dark topic matter, but not like, but in very different ways. One is much darker and much more of a sort of Black Mirror kind of thing.
Ooh, yeah.
Whereas the other thing is more, it's a very dark thing, but we don't focus on it. It's just the dark thing which led to this character being in the situation.
Sure, it's like the context.
Yeah,
sort of,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of context which I say we don't stick on it, but it's a big thing. So the character keeps coming back to it. So it's one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, they are connected in that way, but they're very different genres and very different feels within the overall fantasy umbrella.
Yeah.
So that's how I can work best with those two. Whereas like one of the other things which I'm working on, like the one which is 80% done, is superheroes again, but in a different format. It's a novel as opposed to comic books. And it's much more of a like Heartstopper style YA romance, which is completely different vibe. So I've had to put that to one side because this other idea interested me a little bit more, and now I'm trying to finish those, and then I'll probably come back to that because I know where that goes. Like that one I've actually done proper planning as well, so I know where that ends, and everything. It's one of those things where I can safely leave that where it is, and I can come back to it once I'm ready for it.
It's quite funny. Like I think a lot of artists that I know personally and that I've spoken to, it's like organized chaos. Like the process, like stuff is everywhere, but they know where to find the exact thing. Like they know where it is, and like even mentally as well. Like
oh god, and like I live like that. You know, like my room's a state, but I know where everything is. Like my desk, my work desk looks a mess to anyone from the outside, but I know where everything is.
Yeah.
And that's just how my brain works, but it's also how my creativity works. So yeah, it's one of those things which is the most handy to me to have, I think, in one way, is to have this sort of eclectic all over the place brain, even if it does also occasionally throw up little roadblocks for me or speed bumps. It is also the most useful for me, and it's what really keeps me the most creative. So yeah, like I wouldn't change it. Maybe like a little bit more focus here and there, but like I still like the mess.
I do wonder sometimes if there's part of being an artist that just means you just work in that kind of way. I mean, there probably are artists out there that, there might be artists listening to this being like, I'm actually a really tidy person. Like, what do you say?
I'm sure there are. And I'm sure there are, but I do think there's probably some sort of statistical correlation. Because a lot of the creatives, like I said earlier, a lot have ADD or ADHD. And I know that there are a lot with various other kinds of neurodivergence, and a lot who are a little chaotic and a little all over the place in some aspect of their life. But I also know there are ones who are much more focused and much more disciplined. And there are times where I think, like, I wish I was kind of like that, but I'd be like, well, it's just not how it works for me. So it is a little element of just having to accept yourself and how you're going to work.
Yeah. So interesting. I think we're going to wrap up soon. But I was just thinking, let me know when, like, your books are coming out.
Cool. Well, the final editing process is still early days. So the next novel idea, I'm hoping, because it's self-published, I'm hoping to have it out before the end of this year.
Yeah.
I don't have an exact time scale on that as yet, but I'm aiming for like October, November time. However, we are getting on in the year, so there's a little element of being like, oh, maybe I should give it a couple of months for pre-orders and things like that. So it might become early 2027.
Yeah.
So at the moment, it's a little up in the air.
Yeah.
But the new one possibly towards the end of this year, maybe early next year. The fantasy thing I'm doing on Royal Road, I try to do a spate where I'll do like a chapter a week for like 3 or 4 weeks, and then I might have 2 weeks where I'm sort of getting ahead of myself so I can get some things a little bit good editing time.
Yeah.
So that they read good on even on the internet. So at the moment I'm in a break where I'm sort of working on a couple of chapters to get to such a stage, but I'm thinking the next chapter's probably going to go up in 2 weeks' time.
Nice.
So that I can have enough time to edit the 3, which I've got at the moment, which are already written first drafts, but also to get another chapter in, and then I'll line them up for the next spate to be released. All the other books are out now. So as I mentioned earlier, the entire of the Pride comic book series that was ever published is collected as the Pride Omnibus and is available at all comic book stores and bookstores. They may have copies already or they can order them. It's all fine. Young Men in Love and the sequel, Young Men in Love New Romance, are both out now as well and are in a similar situation. Any comic book store or bookshop can order them. If they don't have copies already, you can actually get that one direct from A Wave Blue World, which is the publisher. I believe their website is literally awaveblueworld.com. I've got some self-published things which have no sort of publishing connections, which are kind of now only available through my website, which is joeglass.co.uk.
Incredible. I was having a stalk at that, so I was going to drop that. I'll put the other thing that you mentioned where, the chapters. I'll stick that in the description.
I'll send you a link for that then.
Please do.
And I do novels too. They're on my website. They are A Con Affair, which was my first novel, which is about being a comic book creator in many respects, but also about it is also a sexy time gay romance thing. It was me doing I want to do a romance, but I want to actually be adult with it as well, and actually. It started as a challenge for me to see if I can write a sex scene. Turns out I can. So that is available on pretty much all book platforms now. So
Amazing.
it's not because it doesn't have a publisher itself. It's harder to get at bookshops, but I think you can order it there at any bookshop of your choice. But yeah, primarily your usual types. I don't want to name some of them because some of them are owned by evil billionaires. But yeah, the usual places you can find them. The follow-up to that, Crisis of Infinite Boyfriends, is unfortunately exclusive to that Rainforest one, which is owned by an evil billionaire. But hopefully will someday become available on other platforms too. But yeah, those are kind of the big things from me.
Amazing. So yeah, vet your publishers before you buy, preferably. But if not, keep your eye out for Joe Glass on your bookshelf. You've answered my question really about plugging things, which is great. And I'll stick your Instagram and all your bits in the description.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Always happy for a follow.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of Armchair Artist. You can find me on social media at Ollie Kirkham on Instagram, where I post about my art practice and such as. And you can email me at armchairartistpod@gmail.com. See descriptions for links and contact infos. We're still doing Critics Corner. Didn't have time today, but hopefully next pod episode we'll do that. So if you're listening, send in your artwork, send in anything creative, and we'll have a look on the pod. It will go on the Instagram, and it will be a really fun time, so please do that. Cool. Amazing. Thank you for coming on again.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Cool. Right. Goodbye.
Bye.